Nearly 5 years ago, I hosted the first Elephant Room right here in Cité des Arts and had a powerful conversation between a Baptist, Muslim, atheist, Catholic, and agnostic about what happens when you die. Thankfully, it was civil and no one actually died during the conversation. I promise this question was not swirling through my mind because I'd gotten married a few months before. In fact, it was something weighing heavily upon me because my mother was ill and her death was imminent. I was wrestling with some very real questions about what happens when you die in a way I'd never had to face before. Since that time, it's often been on my mind and heart to revive the Elephant Room, to gather people from multiple philosophies, religions, and worldviews in order to have more difficult but civil and open discussions about the ties that bind us and the differences that divide us. I distinctly remember calling my friend Freddie Wicker during a very contentious moment in the 2016 presidential election. I mean, really, take your pick, there were tons to choose from. And telling her we had to do something to bring people together to discuss moving forward as a community and country. Thus, here we are. The ultimate goal tonight is to establish a venue, an elephant room, if you will, where all participants who have varying political backgrounds and beliefs are given equal opportunity to present their beliefs in a civil way. We want an elephant room where we can talk about anything, civically, openly, and honestly, see issues from the other side, and let people decide for themselves what to believe. Regardless of what you believe, who you push the button for on November 8th, or how you feel about our current president today, we are all in this together. I hope you leave tonight learning something new, that your viewpoint is challenged, and you make new friends who don't see 100% eye to eye with you. Before I turn it over to Dr. Rick Swanson to tell us more about what we hope to accomplish tonight, I'd like to thank some dear friends who have helped make this night a reality. Rick and Ann Swanson, who have basically begged me for the last 4 years to bring back the Elephant Room and had a huge part in making tonight possible. Freddie Wicker, who agrees with me about 50% of the time, which makes for lots of civil discourse in our friendship. And Dr. Pearson Cross, who is thoughtful and inspiring and has been challenging me to think outside the box since I first sat in his classroom nearly 10 years ago.
Thank you, Matt. Hello, hello, hello. Matt, how do I, is it on? I don't hear anything here. All right. So actually I was running to try to take care of some noise down the hallway. Thank you, Anita, and thank you, I may have missed thanking all the panelists especially. Given today's political climate, I think it takes a lot of courage for anyone to come out publicly and say whatever political view they have. And so I'm here to give maybe a little more formalized introduction to tonight's event. And by the way, I'm Rick Swanson. The presidential election of 1800 pitted Thomas Jefferson of the Democratic Republican Party against John Adams of the Federalist Party. After a vicious campaign where outrageous accusations and insults were hurled by both sides, Jefferson won. And in his inaugural speech, he elaborated on the need for unity. I'm going to quote him a few sentences here. "Let us, fellow citizens, unite with one heart and one mind. Let us restore to social intercourse that harmony and affection without which liberty and even life itself are but dreary things. And let us reflect that, having banished from our land that religious intolerance under which mankind so long bled and suffered, we have yet gained little if we countenance a political intolerance, as despotic, as wicked, and as capable of bitter and bloody persecutions. Every difference of opinion is not a difference of principle. We have been called by different names, brethren of the same principle. Yet we are all Republicans, we are all Federalists." And those were his words. And here Jefferson meant that since at the time he was saying we all share the same love of our country, so really we're all in it together, as Anita just said. Indeed, we are much more alike than we are different. We share the same joys and sadnesses, hopes and fears, more often than not. Yet despite our shared humanity, political discourse in the U.S. has become increasingly toxic. The proliferation of cable and online news sites has allowed people of all political viewpoints to live in biased echo chambers. People now seek out only views they agree with without regard for actual facts. Television news and talk shows pit partisan ideologues against each other. since angry shouting brings higher ratings than reasoned dialogue and debate. And moreover, the anonymity of online communication fosters mere insult trading as a means of argument. We are increasingly isolated, polarized, and uncivil. This situation is unhealthy for individuals and for society. For democracy to exist, let alone flourish, we must be able to have open dialogue. And in that open dialogue, we must be able to express respectful disagreement based on logic and evidence. Being mistaken is not the same thing as being evil. Indeed, we live in an uncertain world where we often must make decisions based on evidence that is weak, incomplete, or even conflicting. Given life's ambiguities, ordinary, decent people can disagree about the meaning of the same set of facts. Good and reasonable people can look at the same information yet reach different conclusions, including in areas like politics, religion, and even morality. In short, simply because someone disagrees with you, it doesn't make them a bad person, nor does it make them your enemy. By getting to know people on the opposite sides of the political spectrum, we can break down the negative stereotypes we have of each other. This improved understanding and empathy will promote the continued thriving of our democracy. We can find commonalities that unite us rather than divide us. And this event tonight hopes to work toward that goal of promoting greater civility in public discourse. Two people who have a child together can both love their child equally and each other, yet have very different philosophies of child rearing. Likewise, we can all love our country and love one another, yet have competing political views. By sharing a love of our country and wanting the best for it and for each other, to paraphrase Jefferson, we are all Democrats, we are all Republicans. So working together, we can create a more perfect union. So I now have the pleasure of introducing to you our moderator for tonight, Pearson Cross, who will introduce our guest panelists, and thank you again, panelists, immensely, for being here, and Pearson will explain tonight's format. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Swanson. I'm Pearson Cross. Can you hear me? No. Yes? No? Can you hear me now? Still can't hear me. Okay, can you hear me now? Okay. This is a guided discussion with a goal towards understanding and learning from people that are different than ourselves. This is not specifically a debate, and in fact, as moderator, if it turns into kind of a debate, I will move to, bring that part to an end and move on to some things. This is we just want to share different viewpoints, and we want to learn from different viewpoints across the political spectrum. It's something that perhaps we do less. We disagree rather than learn from oftentimes. We're going to have a general conversation. We want to give each panelist the chance to answer every question, and I'll tell you how that'll go in a second. If you have questions for the panel, just post them using your smartphone on the Elephant Room Facebook page, on the page wall, the event page, or you can send a private message. You can also fill out an index card, which Freddie is going to be passing around at some point. The brain trust for the Elephant Room series is right up here in the front, my right, your left, and so you would take your suggestions for questions, and there will be a moment when those questions from the audience will be entertained. That will be actually round 4. Remember, no applause. If you could not restrain yourself, no applause, no boos, please. Turn off your cell phones. And get ready to hear from some different people about different views, people that you don't necessarily agree with, but may have something to tell you that you and we all need to hear. Our panelists tonight are sitting to my left, your right, Jan Swift, Executive Director of the Upper Lafayette Development Authority, Brandon Neely, pastor at Christ Church, Jolyn Jolivet, who is chairman of the Lafayette Democratic Party, Dr. Ehab Masale, president of the Muslim Education Center of Acadiana, and last, Dr. Mariah East, director, producer of the film First Cousins. The program tonight is divided into 4 rounds. The first round of questions focuses on personal information, hopes and fears. The second round, views of the proper role and place of government. Third round, discussion moves to the most recent election. Then we'll take questions from the audience, and then finally there's kind of a closing lightning round where we changed the format up a little bit. Okay, so without further ado, why don't we dive into the very first question? And since we're sitting this order, the way it'll work is that we'll go right down the panel here and initially, and then we'll attack the second question and go right down the panel. We'll proceed that way if we can do that. Sorry to put you on the spot, Jan. Okay. Question one, you have 2 minutes to answer this question. Tell us about yourself and something you think is important for the audience to know about who you are.
Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you for this opportunity to be here. I was a little nervous when I got the questions this week because I realized I needed to dig deep and figure out what do I think about things. But I'm a 59-year-old Republican. My daughter Kelly is here. Kelly's 18. She's a senior at ESA, and I have an older daughter. I'm Taylor Swift's mother. She's 24, and she's the original Taylor Swift. And I'm married to John Swift. We have what looks like a very, traditional family, but in fact at our home, we're split pretty much down the middle. I'm actually in the minority about who I voted for and how I looked at the national election. But we can talk about that more when the questions are appropriate. What I want you to know about me is I believe that education is the great equalizer. I came from a background growing up in Baton Rouge where we were disadvantaged in some ways. My family was troubled, but loved us. But I saw education as my way out, and I graduated from LSU Law School, and I was able to get through college and law school on Social Security, and there was student loans, and they were affordable. It was affordable in the 70s and early 80s, and I believe in the American dream. I registered to vote as a Republican when Ronald Reagan was just elected. And I'm proud of Kelly for registering at 18. I waited until I was in law school because I realized how important it was. But the American dream is important to me. And I think that should still be front and center for politicians to look at how can people get what a lot of us have already gotten. That's what I want to share with you about what I'm like. So the discussion tonight, when I speak, I'll be going back to what I think is important for our future here, not only for our local area, but for our country. And I think that's it.
Thank you. Brandon?
I'm Brandon Neely, and I'm the pastor of Christ Church here in Acadiana. And I am a father of 4 children, and my wife is here behind the blinding lights somewhere. And so I've been married for about 17 years now. And if I had to think of what I would tell you, I would say for me, I'll give you this, just so you can know. I spend most of my week alone studying the Bible. In fact, I'm paid to do that and to communicate the principles and the teachings of Christ to a group of people that want to know them. And so my identity and my worldview is completely shaped by that. And so that, I think, will help you get a little framework for how I answer things. If I had to say politically, I would say that I believe politics is downstream from culture, and culture is downstream from religion and worldview. And so most of the things that I would have to say are going to be aiming upstream from politics toward religion and worldview. So hope that helps.
Does. Thank you. John?
Well, hello. I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. My name's Joel Jolivet. I was born and raised here in Lafayette. I grew up actually right off St. Antoine, so low-income, single-parent household. And my mom, she really stressed the importance of education. And so she put me in a private school, Lafayette Christian. She also wanted me to have, a strong Christian upbringing. And one thing I'll say is she struggled. When being a single parent, no matter how many kids you have, and I'm one of, the 3 she raised, it's hard to raise children. But she always took us to the library. Even when we didn't have a car, we walked there. We even walked to school. Because she would tell us every single day, if you want to do better for yourself, you need to learn. And I want to thank her for that, for having, so much faith in me and having so much time invested in me, to where, this is where I am today. But I stress that because growing up, it was rough. And we knew the value of hard work and what a good education can do. And that's something, that I learned from my mom. But also, going to school, I learned we need to have a servant's heart. We should be able and willing to put, ourselves second to help someone else out. And so that's kind of what helped shape my political views. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm a Democrat as well. I believe in helping others. But that's just a little bit about me.
Thank you. Ihab?
Good evening. Thank you for inviting me and including me in this wonderful panel. I'm 51-year-old. I was born in Egypt, and I moved to the United States in 1990. So I lived here actually more than I lived in Egypt. I'm married. I've been married for 20 years, and I have 2 children. My oldest son is 18, and he is a freshman at Tulane University studying biomedical engineering. My daughter, who's here in the audience today, she is junior in Lafayette High. She's 16 years old. I'm a Muslim, and my wife is practicing Catholic. And we taught our children to respect one another, respect the society that we live in. And if I want you to know one thing about me is that in our house we teach our children to appreciate the opportunity that we have here in the United States, and to always give back to society and to help those in need, and to understand that we might be different, but we are on the same team.
Okay, thank you. Mariah?
I also want to thank Ann and Rick and everyone who put this together, Anita, for allowing us an opportunity to get together in this kind of a forum. My name is Mariah East, and I am really involved in the community. I'm a part of the festival world, music world, entertainment industry, if you will. I teach dance lessons. I love Cajun and Zydeco music. I just did a music video yesterday with Shay Williams, who's a hip-hop artist from Lake Charles, Louisiana. So I kind of dabble in all kinds of things. Just produced a documentary. But the heart of everything that I do comes from my belief in being everything that God has called me to be, and everything that God's called anyone to be. And as a Christ follower, I don't have it all together, but I acknowledge that, and I ask on a pretty moment-to-moment basis for him to help me out. So that is also the foundation of my political views, my belief system. All of those things are going to come from that foundation of my faith in Jesus Christ. I'm not the perfect representation of that. I don't know if anyone is, but that's probably the framework for what I'll be talking about this evening.
Okay, thank you. We move on to question 2 in this early round. In 2 minutes or less, what is your biggest hope and fear for you and your family? Jen?
I want to focus on the hope. I mentioned my daughters, and they're young. My hope is that they can be free to pursue any opportunities they want. I feel that today it's so much tougher than it was when I was coming up. Not only the expense of an education, but with social media and all the pressures that people have today. I worry, I want to stay hopeful, but I worry about the way things have changed. So my hope is that they can feel that freedom and feel confident that we're there to support them, and that they do have a safety net like I did. And I do feel encouraged that both my daughters are very up on the news. They stay current, and my youngest here has kidded that she wants to look at politics, and we talk at home, and I want to encourage that in whatever way that she wants to, because she's seen that you can't really gripe about things unless you get involved. And so we've encouraged that at home for everybody to have their own opinion. And I think that'll help her and her sister as they go out into the world. And for my husband and I feel we're lucky being educated at this age. Not that we're set, but we're in a safe position. But I want that same thing for my family and other young people. Thank you.
Thank you. Brandon?
I'll take my cue and focus on the hopes as well. And concerning me and my family, I think the Solomon says that the good life is being surrounded by all your children and your wife and grandchildren, and I like that. I like that. One day, maybe I'll be able to sit at a table with my kids and my wife, and there'll be a lot of little grandkids around. I'm turning 40 this year, and so this is maybe a midlife thing, but that's I can see that coming. I can imagine that in the next years to come, and that is a beautiful hope for me.
Do you have a fear
I
for
can't
you or
think
your
of
family?
I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Okay. Thank you, Joel.
So I don't have any kids, and hopefully I'll get married soon. But one of the, I'm gonna actually just go the opposite route. I'm just start with the fear. Especially for my family, for my nieces and for my nephews. We live in a time where I feel scared if, they had to walk home. It's just because of the color of their skin. And especially when, their parents have to tell them, okay, well, make sure you're as respectful as possible. And the thing is if they're already being judged, there's that feeling there. I remember one time I was walking from a meeting, and I was dressed exactly like this. And, a cop stopped me. And I'm thinking, there is no way in the world, I can get stopped for something like this. Like, what's going on? And come to find out he was a friend of my girlfriend. I was like, okay, this is, that's fine. But the fact that that was a thought in my head, and that's a thought that I think sometimes just for, my family members and my friends. And that's just one fear. There's also the fears for people that, don't look like me but share a different shade of brown. Or, in this current climate where you can't even share, a thought or even put a simple post on Facebook, it can be misconstrued into, something crazy. That's just a few fears, and that's not everything. Now, I do want to focus on the hope. The thing is, there's so much opportunity, and things aren't what they used to be when my mom was alive, or when her grandmother was alive, or her grandmother was alive. And so things are constantly progressing and moving forward. And that's what I love to see. And, as someone that's young, I've always, you always hear someone that's older say, oh, well, this is what it used to be like. And I can't really put myself in, in their shoes. But I know that it's better. And I know that there's people out there that are fighting to make things better. And that's what makes me hopeful.
Thank you. Ehab?
I will start with the hope. Tonight is definitely an example of my biggest hope, because I do hope for more opportunities like this to have an open dialogue, respectful exchange of opinions to take place. I hope for all of us Americans to understand that maybe we stand on opposite sides of the aisle politically, that we may have some disagreements, maybe even about very important and sensitive issues, but that does not mean that we are enemies. We're just perhaps have different views on certain issues. I hope that we ultimately believe that we are all on the same team, and we all should understand that the bigger the divide among us, the weaker we become. We are all in the same boat, so if there is a hole at the bottom of that boat, we all get affected by it, not only one group. My biggest fear, honestly, is to end up in an internment camp, me and my family. My fear is to continue to feel the burden that I am responsible for every Muslim around the globe, for anybody who looks like me, have the same accent, have the same skin color, have the same faith, whether I've met them or not, whether I know them or not, that I'm responsible for their actions, even if I vehemently disapprove of what they do. I should not carry that kind of burden. because I'm not responsible for it and I cannot control it. My biggest fear is to be told that we don't want you here anymore. You're not welcomed. We don't even want your contributions. To feel that you're not welcome is a really an awful way to live. Even to be stared at with fearful eyes, suspicious eyes, is very unpleasant. And you don't know exactly how it feels until you experience it. It's very unpleasant.
Thank you. Mariah?
Well, if I could just piggyback on what you're talking about, I think it flows perfectly into what I was going to talk about as far as my biggest hopes and fears. When 9/11 hit, the first thing that my mother did was she went to each apartment of all of our Saudi friends, because all of them happened to be from Saudi. We didn't know any Egyptians. But we went to every single apartment just to let them know, we're here for you, you have a haven. If something happens, if there's something that a riot breaks out, you can come here and you're safe. And, you know, whenever, of course she was burdened because our faiths are so different. And the Lord told her a long time ago that all she had to do was just love them. That's all you have to do is anybody that, if you don't agree with them, you just need to love them. And so my biggest hope is that regardless of our faith, regardless of our belief system, regardless of, you know, our perspectives, is that we just love one another, you know, and have an open mind and an open heart, a sincerely open mind and a sincerely open heart, because not everyone was raised the same, not everyone believes the same, and that shouldn't disqualify them as being a human that is worthy of respect and being embraced. And of course, my biggest fear would be just the opposite, and just the climate that Rick was talking about earlier with this presidential election has been so hostile on so many levels. And I guess my biggest fears are kind of been realized in some ways. But again, this kind of event this evening is what I hope will continue, because this is, I think, what would make people maybe come together and get a different idea, a different perspective of what it's really like. Because we all don't carry the burdens of our ancestors, and yet that kind of that follows our heritage, that follows our family, and that's a hard burden to carry for a lot of us. And so, again, my biggest hope is that we would just see past our color of our skin and just embrace it, to love it, and not just that. Obviously, everything. You know, we're all part of one race, the human race.
Thank you, Mariah. We move now to round two. These are general views on the role of government in our lives. In 2 minutes or less, what is your biggest hope and fear for our city and for our country? Starting with Jen.
My greatest hope is the administration right now of Mayor Joel Robideau. I had the pleasure of serving on the transition team on the behalf of community development, and I was really shocked at how inclusive he was from the beginning. Joel is listening to all segments of the community, and from the get-go, he was including all the different sectors, demographics, colors, and it's a good thing. He's working on areas. It's not about North and South Lafayette, so I feel very hopeful about that. My fear for our city, briefly, is that we always seem to want something for nothing in Lafayette, and we've got such a great progressive town, and we have a lot of needs, including education, infrastructure, and all, that affects our quality of life, no matter what our skin color. And I worry about that end of quality of life for us. On the national level, I'm fearful about the division that we see. Even with Jefferson and Adams, I think it took them decades to mend their friendship. From what I know about history, they got together late in their lives, decades after that gruesome time in their lives, and we don't have decades to repair the division that we're witnessing right now. I don't usually watch too much TV, but I've been tuning in to Fox News and others, and I'm tired of people yelling at each other. I want to hear solutions and respect for each other, respect for government, because we need government in whatever format you agree with, limited or otherwise. And the lack of respect scares me to death, but I also see how great our country is, and I believe that we can turn this around with dialogue such as this.
Thank you. Brandon?
I recently got to sit in a room and talk a little bit about the Alfred Mouton statue controversy, and I remember the I think it was a town hall discussion that they had about it. And one thing that really struck me, just in reference to our city, was that to the question, do we have a race problem? Do we have a racial problem? It seemed that almost all of the African Americans said yes, and many of the white people said no. And I mean, obviously I'm generalizing, but I do think maybe we are using the different language, or we are obviously experiencing the world differently. And I just, there's a Christian principle that you can't have fellowship with another person unless you're walking in the light. And you got to get everything out in the open and put it on the table, and you got to get it right if you're going to ever be able to put it right. And I'm just afraid that we don't even got it right yet. So how in the world are we going to put it right? So I sense that tension a little bit. I serve in a multi-ethnic church, and we're striving to be more and more multi-ethnic, and so I have very close friends, and I get to dialogue about this. And it's the same thing. It's there seems to be a dichotomy of experience, a dichotomy of language. One person says, is there racism? And the other person hears racial conflict. Like, we're just using different words. I think dialogues like this are a huge help, so we can maybe get it right if we're going to ever put it right. Nationally, the climate of the last election was hard on me as a pastor of people from the Middle East, and people that are African Americans, and people from the country, and blue collar and white collar. And so as a pastor, I definitely found myself growing in that season in my relationship with the Lord. And so with that climate, I just got to say, my biggest concern for our nation is that I don't think that we have a core. And I think it's necessary to have community. You have to have something in common. And I don't think we have something down at the very root of us that we hold all together in common. And so I'm afraid that without that, there can't be ultimate unity.
All right. Thank you. John?
So I kind of want to piggyback off of what Pastor Neely said, especially about the statue, and even, with, let's say, the I-49 connector, because you can actually get a different response depending on the certain, what side of town you're on. And, I like to talk with my elected officials. I like to get, their feedback, and I love to talk with anybody, doesn't matter what coffee shop I'm at, I'm going to talk with you. And the responses are different. Like, let's say if I talked with someone on the south side of town, if we talked about the connector, that's the option, that's what we're gonna have to work on. I wish we could do the roundabout. But the focus there is, it's just about traffic. Whereas, maybe here on the north side of town, there's a different view. It's a view maybe, okay, well, how will this affect a business? How will this affect my way of life? And there's different concerns. And that's just, one aspect, even with the monument. I'm glad you brought that up. But, I'm very hopeful for Lafayette. And I think the only thing that kind of put a damper on some of that hopefulness was, this 2016 election that we just had. All of a sudden, I felt that people were more emboldened, with some of their racist remarks. And I say that because sometimes they didn't realize that it was racist, And I think that's what frightens me, is that with this presidency, there was a lot of comments that were made towards women, towards Hispanics, towards people of color, that that normalized a lot of that, and that's what frightens me. I feel like we're taking several steps back rather than progressing, and I hope we can move past that. And another thing that I guess that's hopeful is that maybe this discussion, it makes a lot more sense than the presidency, but maybe we can have a lot more of this, And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Ehab?
My biggest wish for our community here in Lafayette to cherish and embrace their values, but also tolerate other people's values and understand that just because somebody believes in another set of principles, it does not take away from yours. We can all enjoy the diversity and the differences among us. I also wish for the community at large in Lafayette to understand that the Muslim community here in Lafayette is part of Lafayette, part of Acadiana. And we are not complicit with any individual who have any violent tendencies or radical views. Just because they may, at least in label, share the same faith, it doesn't mean that we endorse this kind of thinking. It actually, more importantly, it doesn't mean that we are aware of the way they plot and scheme. No more than you are aware of your next door neighbor behind closed doors. None of us know what our next door neighbor is doing. You don't know the person next to you in church or temple or synagogue. You don't know what they are thinking. You don't know what they are plotting. No more than us. I wish for the U.S. in general to work with all of our allies around the globe, including and especially moderate Muslim countries, as long as they embrace the same values of peace and tolerance as us. I do want us to look after our best interests. I do want us to secure our borders. I want us to have the best economy that we can. But I also want us to extend helping hands to those in need. I want us to display our generosity, our kindness. That's what the U.S. stands for. And I think we should not shy away from that or move away from that. My fear is for the rhetoric to escalate and start initiating unnecessary wars. I'm afraid that innocent lives get lost needlessly.
Okay, thank you. Mariah?
Well, while I was thinking about our community, I just thought Lafayette is one of the coolest towns in the world. It's just a really unique place, and I think that the fact that we have Cajuns and Creoles, I did a documentary film called First Cousins, Cajun and Creole Music in South Louisiana, and what started out as an interview process with a bunch of musicians to talk about the music and how it affects their lives and how it affects their audiences turned into something a lot bigger and more meaningful. And the story that ends up being told is that historically you had a couple of different groups of people who ended up in the same area, and they've made things work for a few hundred years. And that's a legacy that I'm really proud of. Obviously, it hasn't been perfect. You know, this isn't the most perfect area of the country, but it's still a pretty cool one. And that is certainly something that I'm proud of. And so my biggest hope would be that we can continue that. You know, we can just continue to have our festivals, continue to have music, continue to have reasons to get together and just have fun. You know, forget about the stress of things sometimes. I think that we get a little too caught up in voicing our opinions and thinking that that's going to make a difference in the way we present them. I think how we present what we believe is really important. And so my hope, again, would just be that we just can continue getting together to have fun and have community events where we can do outreach and stuff like that. And, you know, and like you just said, America is known for its generosity. So that would be something that I would hope on a national level, is just that we can continue to help other countries. We've had a good reputation of that for a really long time, and I believe God has blessed our country for, you know, ever since its inception. And I just pray that it will continue that way. I haven't agreed with the administrations, previous administrations, current administrations. I haven't agreed with everything that has been put into motion, but it's my responsibility to pray and just to hope that things will improve. And so my biggest fear is that we lose hope. I would hate that we would all just say, oh, you know, screw it. We're never gonna get this right. We're never gonna get this together. And I think if we become complacent, if we become indifferent because we don't believe that we really can make a difference, I think that's going to be the biggest loss, because nationally, you have decisions that are made by the administration, but change happens in communities. And that's, to me, where all of the change is really going to take place, because that's what's happened for years. And I think that's where you actually can make a difference in your world before you try to make a difference for the rest of the world.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to question 2 in round 2, and this question is about government. In 2 minutes or less, tell us, what should government do or not do about these hopes and fears that you've mentioned? That is government more a part of the solution in your view, or is it more a part of the problem, and why?
Start with me, Ken.
Start with Jen.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jen.
I had the opportunity of working in government when I was young, and I look at government, I guess, as the civil service aspect. I really don't see how government can help us with a lot of our hopes and fears. Most of government are people that come and go. We depend on them to pave our roads, help us at the driver's license bureau. Our leadership is who I look to address our hopes and fears. And I know we'll get into that more later, but I don't really want government helping me in my life. I haven't mentioned my faith much, but listening to my fellow panelists, I'm happy when I see government doing things that I would do as an individual anyway. You know, helping the poor, seeing the children get an education. I want to see government do, though, what we can't do for ourselves. But I'm waiting for our leaders, such as what we've had locally with Joel Robideau, to be inclusive and talk with people and include different people at the table than have been included in the past, so that we can have meaningful dialogue. And I think at the national level, we're all waiting for that leadership. Everyone I talk to is really distressed and disturbed about the tone from the top. And it's because the leader is the one that directs government. And so I don't know that government's a part of the solution or the problem, but government's going to go on as it does. But it's our elected leaders and those of us that stand up. As I said earlier, I don't think we can complain unless we're involved. And so for those of us that are concerned, I think we should, I don't know if I would protest, but get involved, start groups, start dialogues, run for office, help candidates that you think are qualified or that you'd like to see run if it's not you. And those are the things we can do to assist government to make this the kind of society that we want to live in. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon.
The internet in particular and travel, airplanes and such, has made it so our world has become a smaller place. And we have people living in, like my neighbors in Breaux Bridge, for example. We have various beliefs. The world is just becoming so much more pluralistic. And I do believe that the government has been instituted by God and has been given the power to establish a peaceful society, that it should establish a harmonious and peaceful society so that there can be civility between people of different beliefs. The difficulty is, I think, like if you take China for an example, I do think there's a lot of diversity in China, diversity of religion, diversity of ethnicities, and there's relative harmony, but I would say that harmony has been produced by coercion. And what I believe our founders intended, and what I would love to see our government shoot for, is to find a way to have harmony without coercion. And I think the way you do that is you have to produce an environment that is civil, which means that there has to be freedom of conscience. Has to be freedom of conscience, and flowing from that, the freedom of speech, and flowing from that, the freedom of assembly. And as these freedoms established, in particular, I believe, I'm not a political science person, but I think in the First Amendment, we have these freedoms so that we can maintain some level of civility where the believer himself is protected, but his beliefs are still subject to be scrutinized and persuaded against. And so I think the government is almost like the referee in a boxing match. Put the gloves on, here's the ring, you get one bell after a few minutes, don't hit below the belt, let's go at it with our beliefs, but we're keeping this in a confined, safe place, and when it's over, okay, we're done, back to your corners, live to fight another day. I do think the government is mandated by God to establish that sort of a society.
Okay, thank you. Joel?
So I will say, depending on the political party that you're affiliated with, there's different views there's different views pertaining to the role of government in your life, or the role of government itself. One being, for Republicans, government is pretty much the root of all evil, and it's the problem. And I don't see that. The thing is, government, it consists of people. It's the people that are in power. It's the people that we elect and choose to represent us. And, I'll put it like this. If you have one group, and I feel this way, if you have Democrats that are saying, we're going to try. Even if they mess up or they get it right, they're still trying. And if you have one side that's saying, well, it's the problem, and especially if you sit back and cut everything, one thing that people are worried about, even in our state, tops, higher education, healthcare. If we need to raise the revenue, to make sure that those things can just function properly, and those things have been cut over the past 8 years, not only just cut, mid-year budget cuts pretty much every single year. The thing is are we making government working for us? Are we holding our elected officials accountable? And I think that government does play a role. Even in the preamble, ensuring the domestic tranquility, promoting the general defense, or promoting the general welfare, providing for the general defense, and also making sure that we're securing our blessings, not only for us, but for our future. Are we taking care, of who we need to take care of? Are we supporting our, the people that need? The thing is, we're not. And I'm kind of like all over the place, I know. But, there's people out there that, they don't have anything to eat at night. It's crazy. Some people are like, nah, that's not true. But, I grew up in that, in that neighborhood where some people didn't have anything in their fridge to eat. For kids, all they had to eat was whatever they went to school with, that day. And I think there is a role there. I think we also should look at, who we're putting into office, and, what's the balance there. It has to be more of a give and take. And I don't think government's the answer for everything. I think, we have to put in a lot of work ourselves.
Okay, could bring.
Yeah, but I think it's more of a balance. There needs to be a balance there.
Thank you. Ihab?
I will start with an example about my own life of an action that was done by the government. 26 years ago, the government of the United States issued me a visa, an entry visa to the United States, and that changed my life. It gave me the opportunity to pursue my studies, to work, to form a family, to have an opportunity that I never dreamed of. And I will never forget that. And I will be forever grateful for that opportunity. And I will always appreciate the environment that I now live in. And I enjoy it, and I respect it. So sometimes really the government can take actions that change people's lives. It can also, the government sometimes takes action that stirs up emotions that should not be stirred. It creates some fear and panic. Sometimes we, as individuals and as families, abdicate too much of our responsibilities and rely on the government for it. And I will give a quick example by here in Lafayette, we invited a person who was running to be a city mayor here in Lafayette a few years ago. And people in the audience, we started asking them about what they believe in and if they are pro-choice or pro-life, and he put a stop to that, and I really liked his answer. He said, for a mayor of the city, you really should expect me to worry about your traffic, your trash collection, and your drainage. It has nothing to do with my personal beliefs. So I think that as individuals, as families, We should not abdicate the responsibility of, if you want to teach values to your children, that's your responsibility. I should not wait for the President of the United States to teach my children the values, nor should I wait for the teachers in school to teach my children discipline. These are my responsibility as an individual. So we should not abdicate these responsibilities and then set up ourselves up for disappointment.
Thank you. Mariah?
I think too, that when it comes to certain systems that the government has put in place, it helps some and it doesn't help others. In fact, it cripples others. I'll give an example. A friend of mine, he's native from the Dene Nation, which most of y'all might probably recognize as being Navajo. And one of his cousins was complaining about the government and his welfare checks never big enough, he can't ever advance. And so my friend suggested to his cousin, you've got more opportunity than anybody else in this country because you're probably the biggest minority, you know? And he said the scholarships to natives in this country are overwhelmingly generous, you know? But because his cousin had grown up in the welfare system and had not been taught that he could get out, you know, he didn't know even where to go, you know, to get out of that system. He just kind of felt lost. And so I think, I'm just gonna, I don't mean to go off into welfare, but I just think that that's an example of how the government is trying to help, and maybe it's not necessarily the best way to go about it. And so how do we go about that? I don't know that I have the answer for it, but I think that we definitely have to take responsibility first as, you know, families, which a lot of that is really sketchy. My family takes in a lot of foster children, and I just think that it's hard to have a fighting chance for some of these children. And so we're doing what we can, and if everybody did what they could in their community, I think we'd have a different expectation of what the government should do. I don't think the government should pay our bills or put food on our tables. I think the government should protect our borders and defend our country, but I don't think that they should be doing the things that we could do ourselves.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to the next question, and I know it's very tough. Try to keep your answers within 2 minutes. I realize that we could all talk for a long time on these questions, so be as concise as you possibly can be. In 2 minutes or less, given the outcome of the election, have your hopes and fears changed in any way, and if so, how? Given the outcome of the election, have your hopes and fears changed in any way, and if so, how? Jim?
I never thought I would vote for Donald Trump. I'm going to answer both questions in the same one. I ran for office in 2015, and without fail, when I was knocking on doors, people talked about their hopes and dreams. And they were for Donald Trump back in 2015, and I thought, he'll never be the president. But as we watched people, I don't want to say get picked off, but as the choices were narrowed, he became my candidate. And because I'm for less government, he was not the prime candidate, but he was the candidate I felt I would vote for. I really want to see people be able to get an education and get the things we were talking about. Let government do what we can't do for ourselves. But what I'm really fearful for since the election is that those conversations are not happening. It's all about, what did he say today? What chaos is ensuing? And so while I had hope that people would settle down, I think our country's so divided on this issue that I'm really fearful that this is going to be perpetuated until we have some national crisis, and nobody wants to see that. But I was surprised at the tenor of what I would hear walking door to door, and I wanted to share that because people were adamant that they didn't want to see us continue in the way we went. I ran in 705, 03, and 06, and so I think that's a microcosm of our country, and people are very strongly on both sides, and that it scares me that we're not having more of a cohesive discussion at this point.
Thank you, Brandon. Same question.
I said earlier that I believe politics is downstream from culture, and culture is downstream from religion. And I do believe the candidates that were offered to us came from our stream, so to speak, came from our culture, came from our nation's belief systems. And so when I stood in the booth, I was filled with lament, and, you know, I had my kids with me. And so I didn't vote for anybody for president, and I didn't vote for either of the two main candidates. And but honestly, as a believer, I do have hope. The Bible teaches us that God is sovereign over all of these things, and Jesus is called the King of Kings. And that literally means that he is the king over the kings. And so as a Christian, I live my life on that particular principle, and I live as though it's true, and that's where some hope rises up in my heart in spite of the circumstances that I see around me.
Okay, thank you. Joel?
So I voted for Hillary Clinton, and you know, it wasn't hard. You know, she was the most experienced, and if you looked at the Republican field of candidates, there were several people that were more qualified than Donald Trump. And the thing is, you know, off the top of my head, I can tell you 3 people. You had Kasich, you had Rubio, oh, not Cruz, but you also had but I mean, the thing is, there's other people, and that's the point that I'm making. And you had a man who was able to run off of people's fears. You know, people were scared. You know, people honestly believed that Obamacare had death panels. I mean, that was the talking point in 2008 and 2009. And they thought that was going to be the destruction of, you know, our great country. And that's why, you know, what frightens me, and, you know, my outlook hasn't changed since, you know, the election, since Trump got into office. You know, we're talking about the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. You have people, oh, well, we don't want Obamacare, but we need to keep the Affordable Care Act. And they didn't understand the difference. But the thing is, you know, that was the Republican plan. You know, Obama was like, all right, let's work together. And there is really no replace for that. It would just make insurance much more expensive. And that's why Republicans are racking their brain and trying to figure out what can we replace this with, which would probably be Obamacare, except with a few tweaks that they should have made over the past couple of years. And it's, you know, it's just even the nominations, even for education. It's just some of those things there. I kind of wish things could have happened another way, where maybe we could have had Hillary, maybe just some other Republican that could have possibly made it to the top, and then we probably wouldn't have all these talks about, you know, a ban and the world actually laughing at us. It was kind of ironic because the world, you know, people would say, oh, well, everyone's laughing at Obama, but, you know, I just kind of wish things were a little bit different.
Okay, thank you. Ehab, would you mind moving your mic closer to your, we've gotten a message, so
Sure.
Same question, please.
Okay. I was obviously very excited since I got my citizenship to be able to vote, so this is my first time to vote. And I have a bad record so far because everybody I voted for since I got my citizenship has lost. I voted for Mary Landrieu, she lost, David Vitter lost, and I very, very reluctantly voted for Hillary Clinton. I should have listened to my gut and follow George Costanza and do the opposite, but I've never in my life desperately wished for a third-party candidate more than this time. I really firmly believe that we will continue to struggle politically until and unless we have a viable third party. Voting for the lesser of the two evil is a phrase that needs to go away. How many times we have, at least I have heard it since I came to the U.S., that that's the norm. People pick the lesser of the two evil. I think we deserve better than that. And I think that that's not going to go away until we have a viable third party. If we do, then all of the parties will have to embrace policies that are for the overall good. The concept of party over country will go away because it's not going to work. And I think this is really our only hope, is to have a viable, competitive third party that can actually put things in an even manner than we have in the past.
Okay, thank you, Mariah.
If anybody has a cough drop, y'all are welcome to pass it my way. I feel like I'm being a little bit annoying up here. I'm getting over a cold, so excuse me. My reaction was both happy and sad. My candidate won, and at the same time, I felt like immediately I carried this this burden or this attitude of I might, people would perceive me as being racist, homophobic, you name it, anything that we've been accused of as having supported for Trump, and that worries me tremendously because it. I think, like Rick was saying earlier, he said everybody votes, a lot of us get the information, some of us get information that we want to get, and we're not really seeing the whole picture. But a lot of us, I think, have good hearts and good intentions, and we are trying to be as well-researched as we could possibly be. And the information that we come up with is, we have to look at that and review it. And it may not be the best scenario, but we're still going to have to make a decision based on what we believe is right. And so for me, I felt like with all of Donald Trump's flaws that he would carry out what he said he was going to do. And that spoke to me, that hit a nerve with me because I'm very passionate about anything that I put my hand to, and it's obvious, even if he's gone bankrupt, he's still come out of that several times. And I just think he might be a dog in a lot of ways, but he's dogged about some of the things that I think are important. And so I was happy about the election results, and yet at the same time I couldn't rejoice openly or publicly. This is the first time I've said to anyone who I voted for, except for when Ann called me. I haven't talked about it because I didn't want anyone to misconstrue something that I would say, and the last thing I want for anybody to do is not to hear my heart. And my heart is that nobody's perfect. God is in charge regardless. I just have to make the best decision with the information that I have available to me.
Okay, thank you. We're going to turn now in this next round. We've been collecting questions from the audience, and we want to give you 2 minutes each to, they've been listening and they've submitted their questions. And so we're going to give you 2 minutes each to respond to these questions. Okay, I got some on my text, on my phone here. We have one? Okay. Okay, we're good. All right. So the first question, and it's kind of a follow-up to what we've just been talking about. What's the most important issue to you when you step into the voting booth, and how did you come to feel that way? What is the most important question to you when you stepped into the voting booth or step into the voting booth, depending on what you do? And how did you come to feel this way? Starting with you.
I want a gold star for going first.
Okay. Why don't we, look, in fairness, why don't we reverse order, Mariah? Let's go with Mariah. She's got her cough drop now. She's ready to go.
I love hearing what they say, but then I think, I didn't think of that,
Mariah, what is the most important issue to you when you step in the voting booth, and how did you come to feel this way?
I guess for me, it was the economy. Unfortunately, President Obama wasn't able to bring the economy as far as he planned or promised, and I just felt like Trump might have a better shot at doing that. I already said that everyone makes jokes about how he went bankrupt, but I do think that the man's a business genius, and that he's got a chance to do this. And I kind of follow that same line of thinking of, what, he really didn't have to have this. It wasn't anything that he needed for his resume, but he obviously enjoys being in power. But I just hope that he uses that to benefit education and to bring our economy at a better place.
Okay, thank you. Ehab, next question. Same question.
I think the most important thing that came to my mind while I'm voting was the stability of the U.S. and actually of the entire world. I knew what I would get with Hillary Clinton. I knew that she may not get a whole lot done. She would probably just keep the status quo, but that to me was a lot safer choice than the complete uncertainty and unpredictability that I have with Donald Trump.
Okay, Joel?
Almost more of the same. So again, I'm going to vote for the person that believes in equality, no matter your race, color, gender, age, sexual orientation, religion. I believe in equality and fairness, and I'm going to vote for the person that believes in those things. I don't think I could ever, vote for someone that's like Trump. He ran on a message that didn't bring people together. And that's kind of what I'd like to see from, my elected officials, more hope, and this is what we plan on doing and how we're going to work together. And that's what I'd like to see.
Okay, thanks, Brandon.
I'm not a one-issue voter, but I do have a primary one. The Scripture teaches me and teaches that humans are made after God's kind, and that we are distinct from animals, and that Homo sapiens are sacred. And I believe that it extends to embryos who are scientifically proven 100% Homo sapiens, and babies. And I believe in equality and fairness and justice for all Homo sapiens, all humans, period. I'm afraid that we have turned other humans into consumer goods, and we've lost our soul as a nation.
Okay, thank you, Jan.
I had to balance what you said, everyone, what you've said. It was a tough vote for me. I didn't want to see a Clinton administration perpetuating big government and big government decisions. Although I agree with a lot of her points, I really want to see our country have less power at the federal level and more at the state level. And I felt with Trump, even though that was a tough vote, that we would get people put in positions that would look at implementing that. But I do want to be clear that I think this was one of the toughest elections since David Duke and Edwin Edwards ran, because people voted, but no matter which way you voted, you look back and you think, we should have different people running, we should have more choices. So it's been a tough year for all of us.
Okay. Thank you. Now, if you have a question or write it on a note card, you would turn it in over here if you could, and we'll get to your question. Let's move to some practical. This is another question that we have. What can we tangibly do together right now? Tangibly do together right now to make Acadiana a more accepting place? A more accepting place. Jan, you're back on the spot.
Yeah, my work with Upper Lafayette Economic Development has been life-changing, because part of my job is working with all areas of Northern Lafayette Parish. And the biggest thing for me that's opened my heart more, I thought I was open-minded, but until you actually sit down and have discussions about neighborhoods, safety, education, you just don't know. I think a lot of us live in a silo, and I know that I do. In my neighborhood, it's all white. Our church is pretty much, not by design, but by default, all white. And the decisions that we make are based on the input that we get. And so by having these discussions here tonight in our community, I think by asking the hard questions and being more inclusive, we're going to be so much farther down the line for our community. But I think our community overall has a long way to go as far as getting to know what our neighbors think, and how, as you said, it's hard to believe that some people don't have mattresses, they don't have food in their homes, but it's absolutely the truth. And you don't know it until you get out of your comfort zone. And all of us have issues, but some of us have more pressing issues that as a community we need to face.
Thank you, Brandon.
I think I said it earlier, but we've got to distinguish between the believer, that is the individual who has particular beliefs, whether he be Muslim or Christian, or whether they be Republican or Democrat. We have to distinguish between the believer and the beliefs that they hold, and be able to engage civilly in love, and still we still hold to our truth. We still disagree, but we love each other and we treat each other with respect. I think at least then we'd be able to get everything out in the open, and we'd be able to maybe put a few things right then.
Okay, thank
So
you.
I think one of the things that we can all do right now is is be more open-minded and be more understanding. Growing up, I grew up with a lot of people that had completely different opinions than I did. And I have friends that are big progressives or Democrats. Some really great Catholics, and I'm not going to say they feel ostracized, but they do speak openly, and there's people that listen and will care to listen. And I don't think we should be quick to just, turn people that share, a different opinion or view just off and just say, you know what, well, we're going to agree to disagree and that's it, before you really have a meaningful conversation. And I think what we're doing here is something that we should do throughout the community. And we should just, we should visit more with people. We should understand where they're coming from. And I think that's just the very sort of things that we can do right now to make a better Acadiana.
Okay. Yeah.
I honestly think that tonight's event is actually an excellent example of what we would like to have. And I think that just more dialogues like this, I do not know what kind of similar event like this at even larger scale that can take place. So that we can actually, it is sad to me and it's unfortunate that you are afraid to express your opinion, fearing that people will judge how you thought about it. It should not be that bad. Everybody should be able to express their opinion without fearing the backlash to that. So I really cannot think of a better example than tonight as a way to engage in respectful dialogue.
Well, again, coming from a festival world, I would say we just keep throwing festivals. And I'm saying that as a joke, and I'm saying that very seriously too. If it's not just a festival, just fun community events, because as much as we care about our politics and as much as those decisions are going to affect our personal lives, at the end of the day, are you going to remember are you going to be more affected by a debate, or are you going to be more affected by a conversation that you had with someone in the lawn chair sitting next to you, and y'all get to talking about politics? That's when you start caring about what they really believe, what they really value, who their family is, where they're from, what they care about, what they like to eat. I would rather have a one-on-one with somebody than have, and this is beautiful, this is a wonderful form. I think that this definitely needs to continue happening, 100%. But I also think on the one-to-one level, on the family-to-family, on the community-to-community, that's where you're going to get people feeling more comfortable to even discuss that. Because, like I said, until Ann called, I had not spoken publicly. I wasn't about to speak publicly on Facebook or anything about where I stand, because people do follow me. They do care about the projects that I'm involved in, and I would never want my political views to ever interfere with my personal belief system, So, yeah, just throw events where people are forced to be happy.
We have some more questions from the audience. We also have hit the point in our discussion tonight. We don't want to keep everybody here all night, so maybe we could move into the closing round. If you want to stick with the schedule, timing-wise, it's 7:30, so which would mean we go to the closing round.
Y'all want to hear a couple more questions? Yeah. All right, we've got a few more.
Got a few more questions. Okay, we got the go-ahead. As long as you don't ask our weight, that's all we care about. Right? The pendulum is now swinging either far left or far right, and it keeps getting farther away from the middle. The people in the middle feel like they're being left behind. Do you see any hope that the pendulum will slow down and we'll get more united? Mariah?
Thank
You want me to repeat it?
No, you're fine.
Okay.
I don't know how that pendulum would balance other than just the ones in the middle, just sort of reinforcing what they believe in their everyday lives, you know. I'm not really sure how, are you asking, well, like, how the government would affect that, or could you ask that? Actually, go ahead and ask it again.
Yeah, do you see any hope that this kind of swinging between far left and far right will slow down, and that people will be more, that will have a more moderate centrist politics?
Well, yeah, I
That
think
could be another way to say it.
Yeah, I think if the ones who really believed that Trump was the best candidate for this particular election, if they can be gracious about how they go about proclaiming his wonders, you know, in a positive light, if they can be gracious about any good that he does, and if the ones who did not think that Trump was the best candidate for this election can be gracious about allowing him to have a chance to maybe do some of the things that you might have agreed with privately but didn't want to admit that you agreed with, because he did say a lot of good things I think that either side could actually appreciate. So I think if we just allowed ourselves to just give somebody a chance and to not bash the former administration, then I think we might actually get somewhere. And you know, and again, I think this is going to depend on President Trump and how he goes about this. You know, how his administration moves forward. Because if he does do some extreme things that continue to make people upset, then that's really not going to help anything. But yeah, I think it'll just kind of depend on what happens. But I think while we're waiting to see what happens, we ought to just, I think, just kind of relax and just enjoy our freedoms and what we currently have, and continue to fight for what we believe, but to fight for it courageously and graciously at the same time.
Okay, thank you. Iha?
Of course, there is always hope that we can settle in the middle a little bit, but to be realistic, I think it's unlikely, given the two-party system that we have, because they are actually moving further apart rather than to try to get into the middle. So I'm registered independent, and I do feel left behind, like the person who sent the question. So I feel that I will continue to be left behind until there is a viable, like I said earlier, a viable third party. That's probably a more realistic option for us to not have a pendulum at all, but to have options in front of us.
Thank you, John.
So, I mean, the pendulum's swinging because the parties have become more polarized, and I think some more than others. But that also has a lot to do with redistricting and gerrymandering of those districts. So, I mean, think about this. You have elected officials. They don't have to really go out and represent the district they live in. They can actually pick who they want to represent, and that's the problem. You know, you don't have an elected official that has to think, okay, well, this is what the other side's thinking. I'm going to have to compromise here within my district. Well, no, if they already fit your beliefs, your values, you don't have anyone to really be beholden to. So you can just go to whatever, house you're going to, whether it's in the state or whether it's the state legislature or whether it's Congress, and you say, well, this is what my constituents elected me to do. But you know what? That's, whatever that issue was, that's why they're going to stand firm on that. And we wonder why there's no compromise. And when you have, especially for Republicans and Democrats that are, firmly, they're firm in their beliefs and their stances, and if they feel like, oh, well, if I cave in, that shows weakness, we can't compromise here because, all of a sudden I may lose votes back home. And all of a sudden, instead of doing the right thing, we have to think about, okay, well, will I get reelected again? Will we lose control of the House or the Senate? Or will we win the presidency? It's all become more of a political game, and I know I'm probably going over 2 minutes, but that's actually a lot to discuss and a lot to talk about. But I don't think we'll get to the middle anytime soon, and I think it takes a lot of reform when it comes to elections and campaign finance. Also, looking at how we redistrict our districts and who belongs to those districts and a bunch of other stuff. I'm gonna just hand it over.
Thank you, Brandon.
It's a very difficult question for me. I certainly feel left out. I said this earlier, but I don't believe that our country, our nation, the West, has a essential core. I think the core has left since the Middle Ages, that the secularistic project that the West has been undergoing. If you think of the French Revolution and the Notre Dame was dedicated to the goddess of reason, this secular project I don't believe has a core. I believe secularism is floating in midair, and we're grasping for a core. There's no unity in diversity anymore. There's no unity in our diversity unless it's money or power. And I just don't believe that there is a middle, a right, or a left. I believe we're driving off a cliff. Some are just driving faster than others.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
I totally agree with your point about gerrymandering. To get elected, you have to be extreme if you're a Democrat or Republican. And although I've run as a Republican and I've been registered, I've given deep thought lately to changing my party status to independent, because I don't agree lockstep with the Republican Party anymore. I used to see it as the party of hope, but it's so extreme that it's too exclusive of other conversation. I know my daughters are independent, and I don't know if I'm right on this, Pearson, but I know that was the fastest growing registration in Louisiana.
Yeah,
but it's
behind
still,
Republicans.
it's not a high enough percentage to make a difference in the conversation in Louisiana even. But as I look around the country, we're just a microcosm, and we're not going to make progress for quality of life if we stay this extreme. And so I do have hope that we can evolve. I don't know if it'll be in my lifetime, but parties have evolved over time, and they can evolve again if you get involved. I can't stress that enough. We can't just sit here and talk about these issues, especially the younger people here. You've got all the time in the world to learn the issues and get involved, because this is your country, this is your community, and I'm tired of divisiveness too. I've learned so much tonight by listening to all of you, and I think there's hope, but it's going to take a concerted effort by regular people to step up and say we're tired of this.
We're going to move on to the closing round right now, and there's some interesting questions here, and they're going to allow you to kind of talk to, kind of interact a little bit with the other panelists. One of the main goals of this panel, of course, is to understand each other better. Pick a political, we're going to ask you now, and let's start with Jolyn this time.
Oh, wow.
And we'll go that way and then come back this way, okay?
You thought you were safe.
I thought I was safe in the middle.
Nobody's safe here. This is the elephant room.
Left, right.
Okay, hang on just a second. So pick a political opinion you disagree with, but that you understand how a reasonable person can have that view. In 1 minute or less, explain how a reasonable person could disagree with you on that issue.
Oh, man.
So what's something you disagree with, and then explain how it's possible for a reasonable person to have that view, and then explain how they would disagree with you.
There's a few issues, but there's one where there's a few where I completely understand it. So let's say maybe the issue of abortion. I believe that, a woman has a constitutional right to choose. And I don't think, I think that means when I say choose, I mean like you can choose to keep or not to. I don't think anyone's advocating for abortion. I don't think anyone's pro-abortion at all. Now, I can understand someone that's, pro-birth, mostly because, that's something where, if I have a kid or, even for, I'm gonna just say my fiance, because that's something that we to talk about. We're gonna keep, our child. But I do believe that's, that's something that's constitutional, whereas, for some people, they may have more of, they may have a different viewpoint, but I think I can understand, maybe where they're coming from, whether it be religious or moral or something that's personal. So I can understand that. And I don't think I can can disagree with them, but I think that's one viewpoint right there where I can see where someone's coming from.
So you could understand why they're disagreeing with you and respect that even while you disagree.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Same question.
Well, you picked abortion, so that's
Yeah.
what I was planning on.
That's what I picked in my head.
So I will pick something probably from personal experience, which is extreme vetting. So before I got my citizenship, I was subjected to the security checks at airports, and so there's one time I stayed for 10 hours in Houston, and the questions were, are you a terrorist? So I said, no. Do you know anybody who is a terrorist? And I had to scratch my head, well, what if somebody that I know behind closed door is? So, but I know if I said yes, I'm done. So I said yes. And then I had to fill a lot of forms, and I had to list down the address and the birthday of everybody in my family, and I don't know many of them. And they asked me about my parents' address, and they passed away for 10 years. Did they have no address? So they said, no, you still put something. So I put something in there, and I dared them to go to find out where that address is in the village in Egypt. So I feel that did not make our country any safer at all.
But do you understand why someone would support extreme
Absolutely.
vetting? Why would they do that, in your view?
Because it may not have worked with a regular person. Because I have nothing to hide, so maybe I feel that it's unnecessary. But maybe if somebody who actually is engaged in any activity, maybe their responses, their behavior, they will give clues to these security officers at the border that they may get a hint.
Okay, thank you, Maria.
I'll just take gun control. I was going to take abortion, but I decided I'll just change it. I believe that we should have the right to bear and carry arms, but I can see the other side because I think that there's a concern about the ones who are really trigger happy or who are not well educated in how to use a gun, why to use a gun, when to use a gun. And that makes people really nervous. You know, that's how a lot of murders happen, obviously. And so just passing out guns is something that I can understand, you know, why people would be upset about that. But to go through the process and the licensing and all of that kind of thing, if people are safe and they're smart about it, then that should give us a little more security. Of course, my argument was always that the ones that are going to do something wrong are going to do whatever they're going to do anyway, right? But law enforcement, you know, I've had a lot of conversations with different people. A lot of my family are they're law enforcement officers, and they actually get concerned about the safety of the citizens when they're entering a situation, and someone who's a citizen is protecting the situation in their mind, and yet they're not sure and they're not as comfortable in how to handle this. And so the law enforcement officer actually is not being helped by having a typical citizen who's just used to shooting rabbits in the backyard, trying to take on this whole room and you know, some random murderer in the midst. So my feeling would be that, yeah, I guess there's a place for that. I believe that we should have the right to it, but I think it should be a really long, hard, grueling process, and that we shouldn't just pass them out.
Okay, sure.
My issue would be on education. I'm pro-choice for education. My girls have had the opportunity for us to choose their school, and I know that there are two sides to that, and if I was going to take the other side, I would say that our public education system is the bedrock of our American dream, and by diverting resources to alternatives, we're stripping away the best chance for public education to offer, continue to offer education to the masses. But with that being said, I still think that with a lot of children being in failing schools, it's their last hope, and I do think that they should be able to have choice in education.
Okay, thank you, Brandon.
Y'all pick some great ones. I'll pick a local one. I think the statue, the Alfred Mutah statue, should be taken down. I have African American church members and co-pastors and friends, and one tells a story of when he was a kid walking in front of that statue and thinking, that's a man who hates me. And so that helped me have a little empathy and helped me. I didn't even know that statue existed until this controversy, but it helped me experience a little bit of what it's like. And I think it should be taken down. Jesus says that we should do unto others as we would have them do unto us. And I think that alone says it for me. But I can see why some people would buck that. I think I can see because I'm a white guy. I'll be pastoral. White people deal with condemnation. That's what I really believe. We deal with the feelings of guilt, and we're very afraid of being marginalized and guilt-tripped and condemned. And the way white people deal with that is they hold their head in shame and paternalize, or they say, there's no race problem at all. They're not going to even be able to engage in the situation or the conversation or the statue because they're under so much condemnation just when you bring up the word race. And I do believe that if African Americans could say to white people, we forgive you, we don't condemn you, and white people could say, yes, the past was hard, and we don't want our city to be represented this way, that maybe we could take it down, and that would be awesome. So.
All right. Well, one more thing tonight. If in 1 minute or less, if the audience would only remember one thing about you or your perspective, what would you want that to be? We'll go back to Jim.
Okay. I want to reiterate what I said. I want to encourage people here and whoever listens to this and in future conversations to get involved in your community. There's so many things you can do to make a difference, whether it's politics, festivals, getting to know your neighbor. But please know that drives me. I just can't sit back and watch. And I want to encourage others to take that same bull by the horns and own your community. Own where you live, own your country, and be proud, but make a difference where you see it needs to be done.
Thank you, Brandon.
1 minute. Thank y'all so much for this. And I'd love to talk to anyone later about anything. But I would say this. I believe Christianity is distinct from Republicans and Democrats. And Jesus confronts both groups, and he affirms some things in both groups. And it does not fit in the parties of this world.
All right. Thank you, John.
So one thing I would want people to take, especially from me and leave here tonight and from us, is to be more open-minded. Think twice, before you say something or, that could be demeaning. There was one of the things that, my pastor said, and it was speak life. And so I think that's some of the things that we should do. Also, maybe avoid the KTC comment section. But I think that's, we should be more open-minded.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
What I do want you to know about me before you go is that I love Lafayette. I love the opportunity that it offered me, and I want to belong. And I hope that you have given me the opportunity to live here for 20 years now, and I hope that you continue to give me that opportunity to contribute, because I do feel that I can be a value added to this community. So I hope that sentiment will not change, and I hope that I will continue to be welcomed, me and my family, to live within you and amongst you.
Okay. Thank you. Mariah?
And by that same token, I hope that you can look at me, and while I may not be, I don't look to government or to the social systems or any of that for my hope. I look to God for my hope, and I might not get it right all the time. I'm human. I'm not perfect. So I just would hope that people would not just assume, based on someone's election decision, that there are all of these things that fall under that candidate. That candidate is not who I am. and my identity doesn't lie in an election, a presidential election. My identity lies in Jesus Christ, and my hope is in God. It's not in man.
Okay, thank you. And now we're going to thank you, panel. And now we're going to hear from Anita for a few closing remarks.
I don't think I really need this, but
I didn't turn it off, so it should still be on. They'll probably turn it off.
there's a red light.
Want to grab this?
Sure.
So first of all, can we just thank the awesome panel? I knew if I said you couldn't clap the whole time, it would be bigger at the end. So thanks for that big round of applause. Thank you so much for being vulnerable and honest and open and making us think. This was really wonderful, and I'm really glad that you are all here tonight, each one of you, and provided some good perspective. So we've asked you a lot of questions, and now I'd like to ask some rhetorical questions of the audience, some things to kind of make you think before you leave today. About how you can continue this type of conversation moving forward. And so, in the wise words of Freddie Wicker, a couple things to think about. Was there something that a panelist said that made you feel angry? I know I felt angry once or twice tonight. I'd like to challenge you to think with an open mind about why a particular thought or belief made you feel viscerally angry. Also, what is a question that you would have kindly asked to learn more about someone else's opinion that's different than yours? And then lastly, this is not a question, this is a thought, and we hope that you continue this thought as we go out into the other room and share chips and candy bars and beverages, whether they be water or whatever you will. But also that you continue this in your homes with your family, your spouse, your children, the people that you show up in your office with tomorrow and work with, the people you see on the street, these lovely panelists who I'm sure would love to continue this. Please be respectful of others. We live in a really divided time, and I think it's up to us to bring people together and have these conversations. I think we all feel really good that we did that tonight. I hope that we can continue it. Be thoughtful in your questions and be kind. All of these people have different views, but they're willing to share them with you if you're willing to listen. I think that's the most important thing about learning is to listen and to seek first to understand. So I would encourage you all to continue the conversation. We'll keep the building open for about another hour. There are any number of places that we can take this afterward if you want to continue the conversation. So thanks for being here. Please stay tuned, like our Facebook page. We will continue the Elephant Room. I really appreciate you all coming out tonight in this horrible weather. And thank you again to our panelists. We couldn't have done it without you, and we really appreciate your time.